Hey guys, Margaret Adele here, and as another Witchathon is over, that means it's time for the wrap-up. Now, if you were watching my vlogs, you know at the beginning of this one, I wasn't so sure I was actually going to complete this. I had a lot going on, and I just wasn't sure that I'd actually have the time for this, but I pushed through, and I'm really glad because I have won another Witchathon, and I'm going to keep going. So the next one that comes up in probably another month or two, I'll probably do that one as well. So for the first book, I read the ebook Tortured Dreams by Hadina James. Insert the cover here. I'll work on editing later. But this one, I had actually started before the Witchathon, and it just so happened that it worked for one of the prompts, and so I switched out one of the books because I had already planned on reading this one in December, and it was nice to have it count for both. I was kind of disappointed by the end of it. It was all about a young woman who was a sociopath with sociopathic tendencies, but had never killed anyone. However, she had gone up against multiple serial killers and ended up being recruited by the U.S. Marshals to essentially join this task force for catching serial killers. And the one that they were going after was torturing his victims, or their victims, in groups of 10 using medieval torture methods. And it sounded pretty interesting, but like I mentioned before, every character kind of felt like a sociopath. Every character kind of had that flippant, blasé nature about the horrific crimes they were investigating. There was a lot of talking, a lot of exposition, and not a lot of action. And like I mentioned before, they kept saying the same blatantly false fact, quote unquote. You know, the victim's tongue was cut out because they can't scream when their tongues are cut out, which is false. You can scream with your tongue cut out. You just can't scream anything intelligible. So to have the quote unquote experts constantly saying that took me out of the story, when a literal 30-second Google search could give you the answer to that. So probably about a 2 stars. Not going to continue this series, even though the interplay between the characters was interesting. Next up, I read Zoo by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. This one I was really nervous about because the topic was very big and had the fear that the ending was going to be kind of ridiculous, like The Happening. This one was actually much better. It revolves around every animal in the animal kingdom is attacking humans in amounts never before seen. Far from the occasional shark attack or lion attack or whatever, it seems like they are literally banding together to attack humans entirely. And they basically have a vendetta against humans, and the whole point was that the main character, Oz, was essentially trying to figure out why this was happening and how to stop it. I don't want to ruin it if you want to read it for yourself, although I do believe it was a CBS series. I did not watch that. The answer they came up with, slightly sci-fi, slightly eco-warrior, but once they got into the science of it, it did make sense. And it does have not like a tragic ending, not a total downer ending, but definitely slightly depressing, but works with the narrative that they set up. If they had set up this, you know, super happy, everything works ending after the end of this, after they have this global crisis and it's all done by the end of this, you know, book that's not even 400 pages, I probably would have been annoyed. Like, that's too big a problem to wrap up that quickly. But I did like that one, so yay. Next up was the big book that I read. It was close to 500. That was Fatal Burn by Lisa Jackson. Admittedly, the premise of this was sounded fairly generic, and the reveal was pretty cool. It's all about a woman who is essentially being terrorized by this mysterious arsonist who sets her property on fire. And it involves the kidnapping of the baby she gave up for adoption in high school, and it's all somehow connected. And she essentially has to work with her daughter's father, her daughter's adopted father, the man that adopted her, to try to figure out what exactly is going on and how is it connected. It was annoying to begin. It took a little bit to pick up, but once I did, I was like flying through the pages. You know, I need to see what happens next. And I did guess the ending a little bit before it actually happened. I am all sorts of coming out of the light right now, aren't I? But I did enjoy it. I do like Lisa Jackson's plots are usually fairly nice and twisted-turny. It's just maybe work on the synopsis so it doesn't sound so generic. Alright, next up, I read The Silence of Bonaventure Arrow by Rita Legansky. This was given to me as a gift a couple of years ago for my birthday. And I had kind of written it off because it's a literary, it's very flowery, poetic writing. And I wasn't sure that was really my thing. It still kind of isn't. But this book really got to me. Really got to me. It was incredibly bittersweet and kind of that beautifully sad and like when you need a good cry and listen to sad music type of way. This is definitely a book that you should look into if you're going through something and you essentially want someone else walking through the process of grief with you. This revolves around the Arrow family. Dancy has recently lost her husband before the birth of her son. He was murdered on the street in what at first glance appears to be a freak thing. And she blames herself for it, but she kind of has to push through and give birth to their son, Bonaventure, who is totally mute for some reason, but he has this special extra hearing. He can hear in the heart and soul, and he can hear sadness as songs and that kind of stuff. And he can hear the voice of his dead father. And this is very much a case of Dancy learning to let go, and the ghost of William, Bonaventure's father, learning that he does have to leave them behind and go to the other side. And William's mother, who Dancy is living with, also has to learn to let go of a huge thing in her past, a big secret that you find out, and it was really quite shocking. And who the killer is and what actually happened the day William died was actually incredibly shocking as well. I can't see myself ever rereading this just because it is that level of sad. I'm going to apologize for the lighting right now. I know it might be weird, but it's definitely one that I'm glad I read in general. The next up was another ebook, and that was Until the End of the World by Sarah Lyons Fleming. Title there, cover there. So this one was a bit of a stretch for the prompt, but it ended up being perfect for the prompt, because this was my book that makes you feel optimistic, and it's actually a post-apocalypse, technically. But it's actually mid-apocalypse, what I realized. It revolves around this character named Cassie, and after the death of her parents, Cassie kind of let her whole life fall apart. She gave up art that she loved. She got a job that was really whatever, that she wasn't really interested in. She broke up with the love of her life and ended up dating a guy she really didn't care for, and her life was kind of just all up in the air, because she couldn't really figure out how to live it again. And then this virus breaks out. I believe they called it... I can't even remember right now. But so it starts out like she goes to work during the first part of the book, and then it becomes this whole big thing. So you kind of see things deteriorate and break down, and the government trying to fight back, but kind of failing to, and lying to everyone, saying, "Oh, it's fine," when it's not fine. But Cassie's parents were preppers. They were doomsday preppers, which is really the best person you want. So in a weird way, she gets to connect back with her parents in using the skills that they taught her to survive the zombie apocalypse. And it was really cute. And that's weird to say, isn't it? Cute about a post-apocalypse. But it was done very hopefully. She finds herself in this group of people with her friends and coworkers, and actually her ex-boyfriend that she broke up with is stuck with her and trying to survive and trying to use all the skills her parents taught her. And lo and behold, she finds out that one of these safe zones that have been created is run by the love of her life, Adrian. And so it's essentially her goal to get back to him. And essentially she uses the apocalypse essentially uses the apocalypse to better her own life in a weird way. So it was done with a lot of hope and a lot of optimism, and it was much less about how much the world had crumbled and much more about how people were going to do their best to rebuild it. And it was weird that it was so hopeful. It is the first of a series. However, it ended so nicely. Like, there were still some loose threads, still some characters that were kind of left up in the ether. You don't know if they're alive or dead. That would probably be nice to see whether or not they survived or not, but I'm not desperate to need to know. The ending it gave you is pretty good. So maybe not that specific book, but I would probably look into, that specific series, but I would probably look into what else Sarah Lyons Fleming has written. And the last book, as is my tradition, 2 times that it's happened now, I read the group book last, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. This one is based off of Russian folklore. The young girl Vasilia sees these strange little creatures throughout pretty much her entire life, and these are essentially household spirits that help keep back evil spirits, but her new stepmother, with her Catholicism, essentially wants to drive all of them out. And so turning away from these spirits actually brings back a lot of badness that the spirits have been keeping away. And it's up to Vasilia, who can see these spirits, essentially to fight back against this big foe and bring back peace to the area. There's a priest that may or may not be physically attracted to her. They never really tell you. The stepmother is very stereotypically evil, which I'm kind of over as a concept. My husband has step parents, and so I've had a lot of experience around a family with step parents, and so I'm really over the evil step parent thing. I would much rather see a story where the step parent is doing their best and is actually actively trying to connect with their kids, their step kids especially. So that was a little bit annoying. I did like how the ending wasn't totally happy. That was a thing. I don't know that I need my endings totally happy. I need them to be what makes the most sense for the story, and this one did. I liked how not everyone magically believes her when this stuff happens, because I've seen that a lot. There's also a lot of historical fiction. I actually took a Russian history class in college, and I really appreciated seeing that stuff that I learned there and here. Of course, not everything was translated literally. And the author actually has a note at the end about why she chose this word to become this word in English in a way, to let you know what exactly that was supposed to be and what her thought process was. And I appreciated that. And I usually don't read those author notes things. I don't know why. But it was very nice. So Rhiannon is 2-0 for choosing good group books. So I'm excited for the next one. She also does a really good job of picking books that fit the Sabbath that the Witchathon is celebrating, which I really like. So all in all, with all of these books together, I read 2,211 words. Or no, pages, not words. Oof. 2,211 pages throughout the course of these books, which is a lot. That's not even including the books I read other than that this month in December, so I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to see what happens next, although I am also really happy to have a break and get to reading some of the books that I have been holding on my TBR for forever. I've actually got a couple books that are waiting for me to review. I got a couple arcs from publishers that I need to get to reviewing. Wasn't sent them. I won them in a raffle. I'm not to that point yet. I would love to get to that point where publishers send me the books unsolicited to review, but I'm not there. But this was a great Witchathon. Thank you so much for coming along with me on the journey, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.